Welcome back to Learn Astrology with Mary. My name's Mary English. You can find me at www.maryenglish.com, maryenglish.co.uk and UK Astrologer. Hello, I hope you're well. Now we've got a slightly different episode this week. I wrote to someone and asked them their time of birth and I got a reply. So what I thought I'd do is do this person's chart and we'll go from there. So you've probably heard of Sir David Attenborough. He's a naturalist. He worked for a long time and still works. I don't know if he works for, but anyway, he's connected to the BBC and he does lots of nature programmes. And it's not a top secret what his home address is. And I read a while ago, and I've been meaning to do it for ages because he's coming up for 100. It's not a secret, the address that he lives at. He lives in London. And he has said over the years, more than once, that if you send him a letter, please would you put a stamped addressed envelope in there. Now, I sent my letter to him on the 8th of January 2026, asking him for his time of birth, because we have his date of birth, and I thought it would be nice if we could find out his time of birth and then we could have his chart as being accurate. So I wrote the letter, which I won't read all of it out. Okay, I'll read some of it. So I was terribly polite, okay? So there's nothing worse than receiving a letter from someone or any form of communication and the person is rude. But I made a really, really proper, posh letter on posh paper and used correct English and... So I've put here, while your date and place of birth are publicly recorded, your time of birth doesn't appear to be available. I was wondering if you would be willing to share this information if you know it, so that your natal chart can be constructed for professional and research purposes. I completely understand that this is a personal detail you might prefer not to provide. Thank you very much for reading this and for a lifetime of work that has enriched our understanding of the natural world. And of course, I wish you a fabulous 100th birthday on the 8th of May! And signed Mary English. And I enclosed, as instructed, a self-addressed envelope, which arrived to me, I'm having Sunday day. It was something like Wednesday or Thursday this week that my letter came back. And obviously I knew it's from him because it's my handwriting on the envelope. And it looks like the stamp hasn't been stamped. I might be able to reuse that. Anyway, this is Sir David Attenborough's reply. And remembering, of course, that he doesn't actually write many letters himself now. I believe that he has a secretary. He also lives with his daughter, who I think is called Sue. So I don't know if this is written by his daughter or his secretary, but it's not by him because it's not in the first person. And this is what it says. David Attenborough thanks you for your recent letter, but hopes that you will forgive him if he does not do as you request. So my request was to share publicly his time of birth. Now, I assume that the reason he doesn't want to, because I've declared in the letter that I'm an astrologer, and he is most obviously on the side of science. I don't think I've ever heard anything fall from David Attenborough's lips that's got anything to do with astrology. And for a long amount of time, he did work for the BBC, and then he got into films and stuff, and there can be quite anti to astrology, so I perfectly understand that. And I sent the perfectly polite reply, and a polite letter, and I got a perfectly polite reply, so that's fine. So knowing that we're not going to have anybody share that time, and it isn't anywhere that I know. Now, I don't know if he's written a couple of biographies. There's one about being on radio or something, yeah, whether or not anybody's going to reveal what time he was born. Anyway, so what I was wondering is, obviously we know what his so let me share his birth data with you. Let me grab his chart. I've got a desktop with charts. So he's born on the 8th of May 1926. So he's definitely got Sun in Taurus, definitely got Mercury in Aries, Venus in Aries, Mars in Pisces, Jupiter in Aquarius, Saturn in Scorpio, Uranus in Pisces, Neptune in Leo, Pluto in Cancer, and his north node is 18 degrees Cancer, and his Chiron is 29 degrees Aries. Now, earlier in the day, the moon would have been in Pisces, and he doesn't especially seem like a moon in Pisces person. So I was sort of fiddling around with charts, and I think he's probably got a Leo ascendant. He's not shy in front of the camera. He spent a long amount of time working for the BBC, and the BBC is stuffed with people that have planets in Leo or bits in Leo. I used to be regularly on BBC Radio Bristol and BBC Radio Somerset Sound, and while I was not on air, I'd be getting people's birth data, and trust me, even the ones that weren't in front of the camera or the radio or whatever, there were so many Leos working there. Was untrue. And if you think of Leo as the sign of being happy in front of a camera type of thing, I think that suits his way that his life has been. But there are a few other indicators that we'll come on to when we do the other members of his immediate family. So I've found, which isn't hidden, his father's date of birth, his mother's date of birth, which was just that little bit more tricky. And when you're correcting a chart, when you're, there's a word for it now, hold on. When you correct a chart, it's called rectification. Now, I'm sure if this was Chris Brennan doing this episode, he would have been able to work out what time he was born. I'm not experienced in this, and all I've used to be able to determine possibly what time of day he was born is just sort of like how he comes across. So I think that he has Leo ascendant, okay? For the happy in front of the cameras, happy about the whole entertainment thing. He does have a brother, or did have a brother, that was an actor and a director. So that's his older brother, Richard. And he's got a younger brother called John, who works for Alfa Romeo in some capacity. Not too sure what. And he doesn't come across as someone who is shy. There is masses of interviews with him. So you will not find a shortage, if you search or you're on YouTube or whatever, of interviews with David Attenborough. Lovely ones with Greta Thunberg. And he does come across as warm and friendly, which is very much a Leo ascendant thing. Now, I did post it on my Instagram account, and somebody reckoned he was, because he's probably got a Virgo ascendant because he's sort of kind and gentle, and somebody else suggested he probably got a Scorpio one because he didn't want to give his time of birth. I think the reason he didn't want to give me time of birth is because I'd said in my letter that then we'd be able to construct his chart accurately, and I should think that he probably doesn't want to have anything to do with astrology, so that's why he was his polite reply. But anyway, so I will put all of these charts up on the show notes if you're listening to this from YouTube, and a number of you do. So hello, my YouTube listeners. And if you pop over to astromary.libsyn, libsyn.com, always the latest episode comes up first, and you'll be able to see the charts that I'm posting. So chart shape-wise, actually, I think that's a bucket that we've got a lot of planets on one side of the circle, and Saturn is on its own in the sign of Scorpio. If I was doing equal house the sun would be in the 10th, and that's the other reason that I think, this is just my personal opinion, and I could be absolutely completely wrong, but my thinking behind it was that his career has very, very much been his life thing, so that, which blokes will do as a thing anyway, sweeping generalisation there, but the sun in the 10th, and if we're saying it's a Leo ascendant chart, then the root of the chart, the sun is in the 10th, the career is going to be important, okay, which it has been, but I've got a couple of quotes about that. So that's his chart, okay. Now he's got obviously a mummy and a daddy. So daddy was called Frederick, and let me just get his, oh no, I don't want that one, that's the date that he dies. So David Attenborough is him, and then I want, right, his dad's called Frederick. So dad's date of birth is the 4th of April 1887. Now for all of these charts I'm using whole sign. Sorry for doing whoops there, but my Mac's mouse isn't a Mac mouse, and it makes things bigger every now and again. So dad, 4th of April 1887. I've got the location, Stapleford. I've got the date, all lush. So daddy was, because he's passed now, was sun in Aries, moon in Leo, Mercury Pisces, Venus Taurus, Mars Aries, Jupiter Scorpio, Saturn in Cancer, Uranus in Libra, Neptune in Taurus, and Pluto in Gemini. Dad's got an almost one-sided chart, so the only thing that's not quite part of his one-sided bit is his Mercury retrograde, would you believe? La 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 la, I've got one of those. Mercury retrograde in Pisces, okay? And dad's got sun conjunct Mars in the sign of Aries. But we also, because I'm getting my, getting my argument together for the David Attenborough having a Leo ascendant. Daddy's got moon in Leo, okay? Now, mummy, who was called, that's his wife, so that's right, mummy was called Mary, and let's just get her chart up, and mummy was also sun in Aries, moon in Aquarius, Mercury in Aries, Venus in Pisces, Mars Aquarius, Jupiter Cancer, 29 degrees and 24 minutes, Saturn Scorpio, Uranus Scorpio, Neptune Gemini, Pluto Gemini. There's a bit of an age difference, 9 years between them. So mummy's a sun sign Aries with moon in Aquarius. Daddy is sun sign Aries with moon in the opposite sign of Leo. Mum has moon and Mars conjunct in Aquarius. Dad has sun and Mars conjunct in Aries. So there's, between his parents, a lot of Aries energy, which makes me think that he didn't have, this is David Attenborough now, didn't have moon, or doesn't, beg your pardon, so he's still alive, doesn't have moon in Pisces, because if he had, there would have been some sort of tragedy or something to do with his mother when he was much younger, and his childhood might have had some sort of sadness going on, and haven't found that, okay, that I haven't discovered. So that's mum and that's dad. Now, his wife, who sadly has passed, so this is David Attenborough's wife, is called Jane, and her date of birth is the 11th of July 1926, and she's born in Merthyr Tydfil in Wales, and she's a sun Cancer, moon Leo, same moon sign as his dad. She's also got Mercury in Leo, Venus Gemini, Mars Aries, Jupiter Aquarius, Saturn Scorpio, Uranus Pisces, Neptune in Leo, Pluto in Cancer, and her north node is 16 degrees Cancer. So that's quite a good combo for the two of them, for him to be Taurus, earth sign, and for her to be Cancer, water sign. So if we're just looking at normal everyday synastry, and I'm not going to do a synastry chart, we haven't got time. But if we're just looking at everyday sort of connections between people's charts, earth and water do get on. I was going to say swimmingly, but that's, yeah. And I've used 6 a.m. as a time of birth. So the moon's already in 2 degrees Leo at 6 a.m. But I think she's more likely to have had moon in Leo, because I think David Attenborough was born around 10:30, which would give him a 2 degrees Leo ascendant, because her moon is 2 degrees. You know, why do people even get together? You know, how do they meet up? What's the first attraction? It's always the ascendant or the moon of the other person or something that goes on. So I'm making my case, and I could be completely wrong. She's got Aries, Mars in Aries, so Mars is pretty happy in the sign of Aries. And don't forget, David's parents were sun sign Aries, so it would have felt quite nice with he himself, so this is David now, has got Mercury in Aries and Venus in Aries, and 99% I think moon in Aries as well. So that's sort of nice conjunctions and same signs. Why do people even get connected? The tricky thing would have been their Mercuries, if they'd had their Mercuries in different signs, but they didn't. But their Mercuries ended up being compatible because hers was in Leo and his is in Aries. So even though their sun signs are compatible, their Mercury as well, even though their Mercuries are not in their sun signs. Yeah, so that's helpful as well. Now, there is so much information that you can get about David Attenborough's career. It's a lot more tricky to find out about his parents and his childhood. Now, his father was, hold on now, I have got that open, let me just go back. So Dad was some sort of teacher or other, and he ended up at Leicester College, which then became a university. I have got a link in the show notes, but I won't go opening the page back up again. You can find that yourself. And so the children, so all 3 kiddies, they've already had them by now, because he'd got the job at what was a college then became a university. Because he got the job there, the kids came along and lived on the campus for an amount of time. And David was 5 years old at that time. And in that year, Jupiter was transiting through the sign of Leo. Jupiter's the planet of travel and sort of nice things. And they appeared to, the 3 boys, to have enjoyed their time living on the campus at what was a college then and is now a university. And I think they went to the school that was part of it or something, because Dad was teaching there or doing something at the uni. College, big pardon, uni now. And so I think that transit works quite nicely for David moving there when he was 5. Now, I remember a long time ago, and I couldn't find where I'd found it, that David Attenborough hadn't ever wanted to be in front of the camera. Now, don't forget, his older brother, Richard, was an actor and a director, and there was some sort of discussion between the 2 of them about something that was happening at the BBC and a new programme that was going to be happening, and he'd never himself been in front of the camera at that point. And I think it was Richard that said to him, "Oh, go on, to give it a go," and whatever, and he did, and that was it. Off he went. But prior to that, he was just working for the BBC. Yes, so Wikipedia is telling us that has had a long and distinguished career with the BBC. Joining as a trainee in 1952, he became a renowned producer and presenter, famously creating Zoo Quest in 1954. He was a controller of BBC Two and a director of programming for the BBC television in the 60s and the 70s. So he worked for the BBC before he then went in front of the camera, which is where he's been for the rest of his life. So I've got the date. That was a little bit more tricky to find. I had to find a quote where he was quoted in a newspaper, and he was talking about the day that his wife died, and he said that she died the day before what would have been their wedding anniversary, because a lot of times it just gives you, when you Google it and stuff, that they got married in 1950. But because of the quote that I read, which actually I'll put the link for, that he said it was the day prior to their wedding anniversary, then well, that makes that easier. The day before, so there's the day she dies, and she dies the day before, so obviously the next day is the wedding. So that's the 17th of February 1950, and it's a little while after that the whole BBC thing takes off and whatever. He had gone to the university of the school and the home where he was, and he'd studied all these various different things and blah blah blah. So I'm not doing his career, I'm only doing the family today, okay? So the date of the wedding is the 17th of February 1950. What transits were happening? Uranus, we'll start from the top. The sun's in Aquarius, moon's in Aquarius, Mercury's in Aquarius, Venus is in Aquarius, Mars is in Libra, and so is Jupiter. Saturn's in Virgo, Uranus is 1 degree Cancer, Neptune is 17 degrees Libra, and Pluto is 16 degrees retrograde in the sign of Leo, which again I think is probably not far away from his ascendant, but I can't prove any of this. So if he were to have a Leo ascendant, then his descendant, some of it's going to be in Aquarius, and a bunch of planets are in Aquarius on the day he gets married. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, the Sun and the Moon. So he gets married on a new moon. How nice. So that'd be quite cushy. But I can't prove any of this. And to say chart rectification is, I'm not a Virgo enough. I do have Pluto, I think mine's retrograde in my first house, even though I've got a Leo ascendant. My Pluto is retrograde, but I think I'm too old now to go too deeply into things, especially not for the podcast, because I like to keep the podcast light and airy. And there's 2 planets that are in Libras. That's nice for a wedding. And their wedding survived. Yeah. And remembering, of course, that, let me just get his wife up. Hold on. Jane. So for her, being a sun sign Cancer, on the day that they're the date that they're married, there's a bunch of planets in Aquarius, and she's got her natal Jupiter in Aquarius, and David's having a Jupiter return for the wedding, and so is she, because they're both born in the same year. They're both born in 1926, and Jane natally has Jupiter retrograde 26 degrees Aquarius, and David has Jupiter 24 degrees but not retrograde, and on the day they get married, Jupiter is 17 degrees. So that's nice, you know, if you're going to choose a wedding date, which obviously they were not consulting astrologers. And the other thing that I really liked about their charts is they've both got Saturn in the sign of Scorpio. So David's is retrograde 23 degrees and Jane's 19 degrees, and hers is retrograde as well. And Saturn is how you parent your children. And they obviously didn't disagree at all about how the kids can be up. I've got a quote about that in a minute. So there's no actual planets in the sign of Aries on the date that they get married. There's planets opposition in Libra, there's 2, But the North Node, the transiting North Node, on the date of the wedding is now 7 degrees Aries, and the two of them have got planets in Aries. Yeah. So, and if my time of birth that I've given David, 10:30 a.m. is correct, then his MC is 8 degrees Aries, but I cannot prove that. Okay, so that's the date of the wedding. Now, as I say, I'm not covering his career, I'm only covering his immediate family. I'm not doing the kids, I didn't even bother searching for them. So unfortunately, his mother Mary died on the 12th of July 1961. She was in her car driving somewhere, and I can't remember if she was going up a hill or down a hill, but her car was hit by a lorry. So I don't know if she drove into the path of it or it drove into her. And the lorry smashed into her car, and her car also smashed into another car, and she didn't survive the car accident. And I found the date of that, which is the 12th of July 1961. So these are the sorts of things that people that do chart rectification, which I don't, because I'm no good at it, right? So how does that, because these are life-changing things when you lose a close relative, yeah? So he loses his mother quite early on in 1961. Then he loses his dad in 1973, but we'll come on to that in a minute. So Mummy has unfortunately died in a car accident, and she was in the car, which makes it even more horrific. Or I don't know if there's a level of horror. And when that happened, 12th of July 1961, transiting Sun, Moon and Mercury in Cancer, and David has Pluto in Cancer. So the Moon and the Sun are near enough conjunct to his natal Pluto, which is 12 degrees. So the transiting Sun is 19 and the transiting Moon is 10. So that's deep change and transformation, and Cancer's the sign of the mother. And remember, of course, that Mummy actually natally is an Aries. Transiting Venus is in Gemini, transiting Chiron was in Pisces, and David's got natal Mars 3 degrees Pisces. Chiron is 6 degrees at that moment in time, and Jupiter's just gone back into the sign of Aquarius, and it's retrograding, and it's only 3 degrees, whilst natally has it 24, so it's not making a conjunction, but it's starting to go back. Uranus is near enough exactly conjunct to his natal Neptune in Leo, so if he did have or does have a Leo Ascendant and Uranus is sudden things happening, I wouldn't have thought his Ascendant is a very late degree Leo, but hey. And transiting Uranus is 23 degrees, his natal Neptune's 21. So Uranus is conjuncting that. And then that's making an opposition to his natal Jupiter. I think that's all the planets. And then Pluto and Mars are in the sign of Virgo, and he's got his natal Mars in Pisces in opposition. So astrologically, that's the outer planets aren't hitting personal planets. The outer planets are hitting either other outer planets or nothing. So the planets are hitting his natal outer planet. Yeah, so the Sun, Moon, Mercury are all boffing onto his Pluto in Cancer. So that was very, very sad. Then the next death that he has is his father dies. His father's much older now, so Dad's, I think he's 85 when he dies. And I'm only looking at it from David's perspective. I'm not going to go through how that is for the person themselves, but it's just so, because these are the things that you'd have to do to be able to build up chart rectification. You've got to use the things that are life-changing, which is marriage and death. And I'm not saying that this makes this chart that I've constructed with the Leo Ascendant correct. I'm just saying the sort of things you'd have to go through, because I need your opinion on this. What do you think? So I'm no good at rectification. So when his dad dies, The sun is 29 degrees Pisces. The moon is 11 degrees Libra. Mercury is Pisces retrograde. Venus is Pisces. Mars is Capricorn. Jupiter's Aquarius. Saturn is Gemini. Uranus is Libra. Neptune's Saggy. Pluto is in Libra. So in David's chart, hardly anything that he's got as planets in his own chart. When his dad passes over, there's the only thing that he's got in Pisces, and there's 3 planets in Pisces, and his Mars is in Pisces, and they're not conjuncting, but the sun is conjuncting his natal Uranus, because the sun is 29 degrees and his natal Uranus is 28. So when his mother dies, you've got his transiting Pluto, is that right? Yes, transiting. Let me go back. Mum dies. That's Jane. Hold on one second. Don't get confused, Mary. Yeah, Uranus was conjuncting his natal Neptune, and so it's not as impactful. His father was much older, so he would have been expected to pass at some point. He's 85, which is a fair age. So I don't think his father passing was as impactful as his mother passing. Okay. Now the last chart we've got to cover today is the unfortunate death of his wife Jane. So she dies on the 16th of February 1997, and I'm just going to read you some quotes about how it was for him. So this is a quote now. So he said, although Jane's death came as a terrible shock, she'd been ill for some time. So that's a statement. That's not what his quotes. The quotes are, she'd had a huge operation 18 months ago for a non-cancerous tumour, but we knew she was going to need a further operation, said Sir David. But what killed her was nothing to do with the cancer. It was a brain tumour, which isn't uncommon. It's part of the ageing process. Things fail, the body fails. It's so very sad because the cancer she had wasn't an aggressive one. It would have killed her eventually, but it would have taken time. I'm absolutely distraught, he said in the months after Jane's death. I hope I'm coping, but Jane has looked after me ever since we married. Her death was a bolt out of the blue. We loved each other so very much, and I don't quite know how I'm going to adapt to life without her. She kept our family going. He continued, I will miss the parties, the friends, the laughter she created here, their home in Richmond. Jane was a superb cook and wonderful hostess. Well, she was a Cancer. They're good at that. She made many close friends at the BBC over the years. In the 50s, the organisation was very small, so we were a very tight-knit group. And those were the people who came to our home over the years. Those were the people at Jane's funeral. Many women whose husbands work away as often as I did might have made a different life for themselves, said Sir David. Jane didn't. The family was as central to her life as it was to mine. That's not to say she didn't have her own interests and her own friends. She was an enthusiastic potter, and she did social work here in Richmond and worked with various charities. So yes, she had friends, but never her own life. Sir David said many people may have thought him selfish. Some might say, but what did she want? I knew just what Jane wanted. The two of us were home birds. When I came home from trips, I just wanted to be with her. She was my rock. It was simple as that. So there's no denying that their relationship was very strong. However, for him, and losing her was, obviously, listening to that account of how it was for him, very, very difficult. Now, the transits for that date, which is the 16th of February 1997, because that's right, yes, because they were married on the 17th of February. This is the 16th of February, which is actually only tomorrow. The transiting moon's in Gemini. He has nothing in Gemini, nothing in Saggy, nothing in Virgo, but he does have Mars and Uranus in Pluto, so there's a square forming there. But the most important transit is transiting Saturn. So that year, 97, Saturn was transiting through Aries, which is in fact where it is today. And if he has Moon in Aries, which I suspect he does because his parents were Aries, Saturn is at that point in time, at that exact date, 5 degrees, 5 degrees Aries. So it's pretty much conjunct his moon, because his moon is somewhere either 0 degrees Aries or a little later on, maybe a lot later on, but it's going to be Aries for that date. So when you've got transiting Saturn on your natal moon and your natal Mars, and in the sign of your natal Mercury, and that's where Saturn's transiting, that's going to take you a while, because the first thing it hits is his moon, then it will hit his Venus. If they're in that order, it could be his moon's the other way around. That's not a happy time, and it takes a certain amount of energy to get over it. So transiting Mars is retrograde in Libra, and the article says that he was abroad at the time and he got a phone call, and the phone call was to say that she was seriously ill. So he flies straight home. He sees her in the hospital, I presume it's hospital, but in the bed, and the doctors, or he says, he held her hand and she knew that it was him holding her hand, and he was with her when she passed. So it takes an awful lot of strength to be with someone when they are actually dying. I've done it once, especially if it's someone you're very, very close to. And there's a whole bunch of planets in Aquarius. So Jupiter is now returning again into Aquarius. Uranus is there, Mercury's there, Venus is there, the Sun there. The Sun is exactly on his Jupiter, which actually is a nice transit for when someone passes. That, as he says, it wasn't unexpected. She had been ill, and what she finally died of was something different. And it's just because something's not expected doesn't mean to say that it isn't going to be sad, and might take a while to recover from. So I expect it took him for the rest of that Saturn transit to be able to recover. I don't know, I haven't Googled any further. So we've done a little skip around David Attenborough's chart. We have got his date of birth, we've got his location of birth. I've been through today his parents' charts, that's Frederick and his mother Mary. We've discussed his wife Jane's chart and the passing of his mother, then his father, and then his wife. And I believe that he lives with his daughter now, and I believe his daughter's called Sue, but hey, there we go. So we've done a little bit on his chart. I don't know what time he's born, and maybe we'll never find out. So today, what I've done is, this is how you would do rectification. Okay, you go for those dates that are most important for the person, because obviously we did the marriage as well. You do those important dates, and then there'll be something going over the ascendant or near to something somewhere. But obviously, to rectify a chart, you're trying to find something that's going to go over the ascendant. Yeah, and the only one that I supposedly demonstrated today is that Jupiter was transiting through the sign of Leo when he moved to the little college when he's 5 years old, but nothing else. So I don't know. Let's have your opinion. And obviously, if any of David Attenborough's family is listening, which I absolutely doubt at all, I do hope he has a lovely 100th birthday coming up, and it is marvellous, the work that he has done over the years. And so if anybody does know his time of birth, please let me know, and then we can know exactly. So if you've got any queries on astrology, or you'd like to have your chart on the show, or there's something you think I should be covering, I am still working to get other people to come onto the show to talk about the things that they'd love to teach you, so that will be coming up. So I hope you have a fab week, and I'll be back next week. Bye bye now.